If you've been struggling with hormonal issues, irregular cycles, PMS, estrogen dominance, fertility challenges, mood swings, and you feel like you've tried everything, I want you to consider something. The problem might not start with your hormones at all. It might start in your gut. Today, we're talking about the gut hormone connection, specifically something called the estrobolome, and why your digestive health is one of the most powerful levers you have for hormonal balance. Hello and welcome to the Midwife Says. My name is Melanie and I am almost a licensed midwife in the state of Florida. Here I share evidence-based facts about women's health, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. I'm going to go through a few points talking about root causes and what to do about each of these problem areas. Number one is your gut microbiome. You have approximately 38 trillion microorganisms living in your gut. Bacteria, fungi, viruses, and they collectively influence almost every system in your body. Your immune system, your brain, your metabolism, and critically for today's conversation, your hormones. The Human Microbiome Project, launched by the NIH, confirmed that the composition of your gut microbiome is unique to you, just like a fingerprint, and that diversity is generally protective. When diversity drops due to antibiotics, processed foods, stress, or lack of fiber, your health suffers in ways that can seem completely unrelated to digestion. My personal adventure with gut health began more than 10 years ago when myself and my husband were not getting any answers from the conventional medicine route, and we had to do research on our own. This led us down a huge rabbit trail of information, and I'm so grateful for that. At that time, none of this information was really accepted, not even leaky gut, which is now proven by multiple studies that it's an issue for people. So I understand firsthand that you can have so many things happen and have no clue that it really truly is tied to your gut. So that brings me to the estrobolome, the gut bacteria, which is running your estrogen levels. Here's the connection most people have never heard of. A subset of your gut bacteria, collectively called the estrobolome, produce an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase. This enzyme deconjugates estrogen in the gut, determining how much estrogen gets reabsorbed into circulation versus how much gets excreted. Published research in the journal Maturitas established that the estrobolome directly modulates circulating estrogen levels. A dysbiotic gut, one with too much beta-glucuronidase activity, reactivates estrogen that should have been cleared, driving it back into circulation. This is one major mechanism behind estrogen dominance. So when people come to me with estrogen dominant symptoms, heavy periods, breast tenderness, endometriosis, fibroids, PMS, rage, one of my first questions is, what is your digestion like? Rebuilding your gut diversity is imperative. You can do this through fermented foods, fiber, and targeted probiotics. This is not supplementary to hormonal healing, it is hormonal healing. There's a few probiotics that I really trust, and I find it important to really stick by studied brands because, as we all know, the supplement industry is something that we can easily pour our money into and not get much back. My favorite brand is Seed and Thrive. They've both been proven to be effective in multiple studies, and I'll link them down below. As I said, my gut health journey began more than 10 years ago, and I could not believe how much of a difference cutting out gluten and dairy made on my gut inflammation. In addition, I started taking zinc carnosine, which I'll also link in the comments down below, and these things dramatically inflammation and overall my health. So that leads me to inflammation and how that affects hormones and intestinal permeability, which is called leaky gut. So a condition where the tight junctions of the intestinal lining become compromised, allowing partially digested food, particles, toxins, and bacteria to enter the bloodstream. Dr. Alessio Fasano, a leading researcher at Harvard, has published an extensively detailed study on leaky gut and its connection to autoimmune disease and systemic inflammation. So why does this matter? Inflammation suppresses the HPO axis, the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, which is a communication system between your brain and your ovaries. So chronic low-grade inflammation from intestinal permeability or inflammatory foods like gluten and dairy can disrupt ovulation, suppress progesterone production, and contribute to conditions like PMOS, thyroid disorders, and endometriosis, all of which have inflammatory roots. So supporting the gut lining repair, I already discussed zinc carnosine, which has been found to be very effective in a study done in Japan. L-glutamine is the primary source for intestinal cells and has great evidence supporting mucosal integrity. I will link both of those products down below as well. Things like bone broth, collagen peptides, and again, eliminating gluten and dairy, and even just as a trial, can also dramatically reduce intestinal inflammation in people who are susceptible in these things. There's no harm in cutting it out, see how you feel, and adding it back again and see what happens. Eliminating gluten and dairy was really the first step for me in addressing my gut health. After eliminating gluten and dairy, I started looking into some other things. As I said, zinc carnosine was one of those things because it really brings those junctions back together and has shown in microscopic studies to eliminate the permeability of the intestines. The other thing is adding foods in that support my health. So as well as taking foods out, we have to add some foods in. And this is where estrogen clearance comes into play. Your liver is your primary detoxification organ, and estrogen metabolism is one of its major jobs. Estrogen is metabolized in the liver through a process called phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification, where it's broken down into metabolites and conjugated for excretion through bile. This goes into the intestines and ideally out through your stool. The problem is, if your gut is dysbiotic, so we're going back to the estrobolome, those conjugated estrogens get deconjugated and reabsorbed. If your liver is overburdened by alcohol, toxins, medications, or poor nutrition, phase 1 or phase 2 detox slows down. Both pathways have to be working for estrogen to clear properly. So, what can we do about this? Nutritional support for the gut-liver axis. That means cruciferous vegetables, which contain sulforaphane and inositol-3 carbinol, which support phase 2 detoxification. DIM is the stable supplemental form of I3C. And again, I will link a DIM supplement down below. This one I always see mentioned for a lot of functional medicine clients. Fiber, especially from flaxseed, binds to estrogen in the gut for excretion. So eliminate gluten and dairy, add cruciferous vegetables and flaxseed. So as I started adding new foods into my diet, I started adding a lot of cruciferous vegetables, kale, broccoli, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, these things. And I cannot tell you how much of a difference it made. In 1 week, I lost 5 pounds without doing anything differently except that. I made sure that half of every plate that I ate was full of cruciferous vegetables, raw or cooked, however you prefer them. But I'm not joking. It makes a huge difference. If you take one thing from today, your hormones don't live in a vacuum. They are downstream of your gut health, your liver function, your inflammation levels, and your overall microbiome diversity. Start there before you assume that your ovaries are the problem. If this resonated, share it with a woman who needs to hear it. And let me know in the comments what gut health changes have made the biggest difference for your hormonal health. I read every single comment. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with me today. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.